Hi everybody, welcome to Dynamic Yosemite Valley. This is the Yosemite storyteller Brian Shore. I'm joined today by my good friend Emily Brosk and co-worker. She runs the volunteer department here. And we are in beautiful Cook's Meadow. Over behind me you can probably see one of my favorite features here in the valley. That is Sentinel Rock. And in the mid-1800s, a new village started to be developed under Sentinel Rock, the first non-native village there. And it was called the Lower Village. And we're going to talk today in the short story about Galen Clark, one of the residents of the Lower Village. I see some of you are like, oh, hey, Galen Clark. At least I imagine I see you're doing that. That's right, Yosemite's guardian. Now imagine you're nodding. Oh, yeah, Yosemite's guardian. We're going to talk a little bit about him and the job he had to do as a guardian, protecting Yosemite's resources, guiding the development of the park here, and of course policing the concessionaires, the community, and visitors alike. Certainly not an easy job, and fortunately for him it is autumn and his season's over, October 20th if I'm not mistaken, right? And you can see the colors changing here behind me. Well, you know, maybe not so much right here, but down the way to the west at Bridal Veil Falls, formerly called Pohono for thousands of years, I'm sure. The dogwoods and the maples, they are spectacular. But here in the meadow, not so much. It takes a little bit of imagination probably to think about the flowers we used to have earlier this season. All those early season violets and bleeding hearts. Remember when the meadows turned all purple and all the lupin was out? It smelled amazing. But those days are gone. Even the asters are gone to seed. Right now, maybe you'll catch a glimpse of some of the milkweed floating past me right here. Seasons come to an end. Yosemite Falls is quiet. That's why you can hear my voice today. Maybe it's a good time to reflect on the year it's been, right? The year it's been full of pandemic, politics, and of course natural disasters, fires, right? Oh no, this isn't 2020. You thought I was talking about 2020. No, this is 1879. 1879, and this is Galen Clark thinking about this. He's reflecting on the summer, not me. No, 1879 is the year, right? Galen Clark used to have a cabin right across the river here by that cedar tree. You see it? That cedar tree right there? No? No, maybe. Anyhow, a little table he used to have outside his cabin. He would sit at that table. Of course, he'd get interrupted. Maybe it was guests who would come by to meet the guardian, you know, or a laborer on his way to work would stop by and chat him up and say hi. He was a very nice person. He always talked to everybody. Or maybe it was the school kids on the way by, on the way to school. Probably those lighted kids. I do hear that some of those kids are pretty rascally, if you know what I mean. Sometimes seeing those kids made Galen think about his kids. He didn't see them grow up. He didn't see them go to school. He missed all that part. Sometimes he thought about his son, Alonzo, who used to work with him over in Wawona. Tried to make Clark Station a success and then passed away. It seems like just yesterday, but of course it was about 5 years ago. 1873, 1874, he passed away. Not too long ago. Well, there's a lot to think about, but there's also a lot to do here in Yosemite. You know, it's gotten quiet now. We got to write reports to the commissioners, and Mr. Clark, he sits down at his desk and starts writing about the school that closed last week, or maybe he's writing about the hotels, Blacks and Bernards closed for the season. Even way up there, the snows at La Casa, Nevada have come down. You know what Emily says about that? Oh, Emily Snow. When the snows reach the valley, that's an avalanche. Oh, hilarious. She's got that New England wit. Great stuff, Miss Emily Snow. Even the Cosmopolitan is shut down. The saloon and bathhouse done for the season. Mr. Hayes has returned down to Merced, where he's going to join his sister and brother-in-law, Johnny Smith, in their endeavor down there, their saloon, coincidentally also called the Cosmopolitan. Not very imaginative right there, I suppose. But Mr. Clark, maybe him and I should go grab a drink there at the Cosmopolitan. I think that would be pretty nice. They have some fantastic drinks. They're really well known for their corpse revivers. Although I've never drank anything that has the word corpse in it. It could be good, but they're closed actually. More likely we'd get a drink over at Leidig's place. They had a place just on the other side of Conway's Road over there, right across the street from Mr. Clark's place. And they are good people, those Leidigs. Mr. Leidig and let's see, about 12 other guys are going to spend all winter here. They're going to take care of shoveling off all the buildings out here, and they're going to cut ice from Mirror Lake. Eventually, probably 20 tons of ice to keep the summer operations going. Mr. Clark will note that in his journal, and he'll also note that the hotel will stay open, run by, more than anybody else, Isabella Leidig, Mrs. Leidig, and she would not only run the hotel, but of course take care of everybody. You know, when accidents happen, she would nurse them back to health. I remember in 1874, it was Miss Susan Hayes. She was carrying a coal lantern that exploded on her. I think it was in October, actually, just about this time of year, and she had to stay all winter. She couldn't travel, and of course, Miss Leidig, she nursed her back to health, because that's the kind of person Miss Leidig is. Fortunately for her, not a lot of nursing this year. As far as sicknesses go, very lucky this year here in Yosemite. 1879, the pandemic that's been going through the United States, the fourth wave of cholera after 10 years may finally be subsiding. It's a long time, 10 years, although yellow fever has suddenly come upon the southeast. 5,000 people, I hear, in Louisiana may be dead from yellow fever, and diphtheria is always a concern, on the rise as well. As a matter of fact, it was Pike Phillips who had diphtheria here, not in the park, but as a child. That's really why he talks that way. Diphtheria. And Galen Clark, you know, he knows all about breathing problems. Diphtheria makes it difficult to breathe. It builds up a film over the trachea, and for him it was consumption. Diagnosed 25 years ago, and here he is. He only had 6 months to live at that time, still guardian today. Pretty amazing. Every year though, every year it gets back at him. He gets pneumonia in the winter times. This last winter he traveled up to Sacramento, where of course he fell prey to it again, sicknesses. And that's not the only sickness that you have in Sacramento. I'm of course talking about politics. How can you not talk about politics in Sacramento? For Galen, it's the worst part of his job, the whole politics of everything. Oh, but the biggest political event that happened this season, 1879, was the arrival of former Republican President Ulysses S. Grant. Of course, you might know him as a major figure in the Civil War, and of course a trained man himself, but he's quite an interesting person. He had just traveled the world for 2 years before coming here, and the stories he told. But the most incredible one, I think, was just the campaign trail from him. He told about trying to reunite a politically torn country, of trying to get citizenship for African Americans of the day. And he denounced the Ku Klux Klan, which cost him a lot of votes. Votes in Georgia, votes in Louisiana. But nonetheless, he persevered, and he won the presidency in 1869 under the slogan, "Let us have peace." A good slogan there. Unfortunately, not all politicians are like the former president. Some of them cause a lot of problems here. You can vote a bad president out, but for the commissioners, well, they're appointed by the governor, and they don't always care about what's happening in Yosemite. They just want the position. So for some of them, they're causing problems. Mr. Hutchings, Mr. Howard, they've all complained, and there's a new stir among the politicians, a new constitution here in California. What will that bring? It's hard to say. It's tough here. The locals here, they have such an innate sense of expectation that gets criticized. But for Hutchins, you know, what's he going to do? Do they think they can do better? Is that what they think? Do they think they can try to eliminate trails like I haven't tried, or Galen Clark's never tried to eliminate trail fees? Important things like that. Do you think they can manage the overgrowth of the forest on the meadows here? You know, it was only 25 years ago, 1855, when Galen Clark arrived, and 3/4 of these meadows were open to the valley. It's certainly changed over the years as you look back. You can hardly see some of the scenes these days. Well, I think I might need a break here. And I didn't even get to cover some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. Harris's Camping Ground. They had a great first year this year. And of course, the chapel just across the way, almost completed. They just need to put a roof on it this year. Oh, and fires. I talked about Meadow encroachment. I didn't even talk about fires. Did you know Wawona's built a brand new hotel after that devastating fire last year? Burned down everything except for Long White and the stables. But the new hotel, guests are saying it's a modern marvel there. And of course, there's the floods of this year. Actually, there weren't any floods this year. This year was a pretty mild flood year, and I attribute that to appropriations from the government. It rarely happens. You know, sometime in the future we should get some sort of maybe nonprofit system where people could donate. But back in those days, it was very hard to get money. But fortunately, last year, $10,000 allowed us to repair some of these bridges, including the El Cap Bridge. Can't imagine it'll ever need fixing up here. And while we were fixing that up, we blasted away that pesky moraine. Remember how the meadows here used to flood? Well, now they don't because of our dynamiting that moraine there at El Cap, and even the mosquito population has diminished. I imagine that future generations are certainly going to praise Mr. Clark for that decision right there. Well, there's a lot to think about being the guardian of Yosemite, you know, protecting resources, and of course, guiding development here in the park, and policing the concessionaire, making sure that they still provide recreation and resort for future generations, inalienable for all time, as Mr. Lincoln signed it into law. Who's going to do that in our future? Who's going to do that? Maybe it's you. Maybe you're going to do that. Well, I know that you have a lot of plans to work on today, so I'm going to let you all resume with that. And on behalf of myself and Miss Emily Brosk, I want you all to enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure it won't be as entertaining as this story was. And I leave you with this beautiful view of Sentinel Rock and people enjoying Yosemite Valley.